I was thinking is, I'm sure this is an easy one, but just recommending what airport to fly into and like
Yes,
how to get there.
that's a very good question. So, in Morocco, you're probably going to want to do a tour of multiple cities.
Mm.
And it's actually sometimes, most of the time, a better idea to fly in and out of different airports.
Oh, okay.
Morocco is surprisingly big and surprisingly a lot of hours of driving. So, the first time we went, we flew into Marrakesh and then we flew out of Fez.
Mm.
And that worked well because you can make a circle while heading out to the Sahara, which is kind of must do in Morocco. And the Sahara can be accessed from both Fez and Marrakesh. I believe there's one very small airport that's closer to the Sahara, but it's still multiple hours of driving from there.
Okay.
So no matter how you cut it, you're going to
Yes.
drive a lot,
Okay.
especially to get to the desert. But I would actually recommend flying in and out of different airports because otherwise you're going to add significant drive time if you want to see multiple cities at the same
Okay,
time.
that's good. All right. Well, I'm going to ask you that once we're officially
Perfect.
recording, but that's good to know because
Perfect.
I was thinking, I'm like, I don't really know anything about it. I've never been there. I'm
Yes,
so curious. It looks just fascinating and so interesting. So I'm
it's very,
excited to
very
learn
fun.
more.
It's very fun.
Okay. Well, I will do a little introduction to the
Okay.
episode and then I'll give you a minute to just introduce yourself and you can tell
Okay.
us whatever you want us to know. And then we'll just get in and chat about Morocco. So
Perfect.
should be
Let's do
fun.
it.
All right. And it's Leslie Stroud.
That's right.
Just want to, yours is a pretty
That's
basic name,
perfect.
but I like to always just confirm before we start.
Always a good idea.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And we can edit. So if needed,
Okay. If I
don't
have a kid pop
worry.
in, I apologize in
Yes.
advance. I've warned them, but
I
you
know.
know how it goes.
I have my dog here by me sleeping. So hopefully I shut her out and she already broke into the room. So we'll
Oh,
see.
there you go. There
Yeah.
you go.
So anyway. All right. Here we go.
Okay.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us for another week of our This Travel Tribe podcast. Today is going to be a really fun episode. We are going to be learning all about a new destination that I bet that a lot of you have not visited and maybe haven't even thought about, and that is going to Morocco. And we have a guest today, Leslie Stroud, and she is going to shed light on visiting Morocco and tell us all the ins and outs and tips that she has for making it a really fun and successful trip with your family. So I'm really excited to learn from Leslie, and I'm grateful for her taking time to join us today. Before we start talking about Morocco, though, Leslie, just welcome. And do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes. Thank you so much for having me. My family is a family of seven. I have five kids with my husband, Chris, and we set off in an adventure in 2018 to figure out where to live around the world. So we have now visited with our troop of seven about 40-ish countries and ended up in Portugal, which actually is really close to Morocco, which I did not know. It's only about an hour flight to Marrakesh from Lisbon, where we live. So we have visited Morocco now twice, once as a couple to kind of see how it was, and once with our kids because we immediately knew we wanted to bring them back. So we really, really love Morocco. We're already planning our next trip, probably in September. And for us, it's a brand new favorite spot to go.
Okay, well, I'm excited to learn more about it from you. So, first of all, I think people might just wonder, where is Morocco exactly and how would
Yes.
I get there? So, do you want to kind of tell us
Yes.
about that?
Good question. So, like I said, we've only flown from Portugal, so I'm not exactly sure where the connections are coming from the United States, but you'll definitely want to fly into Morocco, and it is located in the northern part of Africa. So technically, we could actually even drive from Europe over to Morocco. And when we have been shopping in Morocco, they have offered to drive goods back to Europe as well. So if you were to drive down, you would probably go through Tangier, which is a great city to visit in the very northern part. But Morocco has multiple airports, Casablanca being a large one. Fez, which is the oldest city of Morocco, and Marrakesh, which is probably the most touristy and hustle bustle kind of city that you can visit there. And I think there are other small airports there too that you can connect to once you're there.
Okay. So that gives us a good kind of overview of how it all works getting there. So
Yes.
when you're planning a trip to Morocco, what are kind of the first things that you think about and want to consider when you're just starting to think about going there?
Absolutely. So know that Morocco is, first of all, a Muslim country, right? So they do have some expectations of people there. They're much more forgiving with tourists, but in general, drinking alcohol is not allowed. You want to be fairly modest, right? No one's probably going to say anything to you, but as a people, they generally do want you to, not be super immodest, right? Covering shoulders, not having mini skirts, not having tons of cleavage. Depending on the city you're in, like Marrakesh, definitely no one would say anything to you, and you could definitely find bars and places to drink. We don't drink, but I know that it exists. However, the farther you get from places like that, you're going to see a lot of women covered up completely, depending on the city. We had a really good time talking to our guide and learning more about the Islamic beliefs, which I actually really appreciate. I think it's a really strong belief system with really good morals, and I've come to really truly respect them a lot. So with that in mind, you're going to find really wholesome people, but they are, going to expect you to kind of be a little bit respectful of their beliefs as well and not be drunk or, doing things very loud and obnoxious, basically.
Okay, that's good to know. Now, you mentioned having a guide. So,
Yes.
tell us how that worked for you.
So I just found a guide online. However, we fell in love with him. His name is Adir, and I would highly recommend him. I'm happy to share his contact information. I at first thought that we would drive ourselves around Morocco because we were going as a couple, and that sounds fun. But the more I read online, the more it seemed really nice to have a driver. I think you can easily drive in Morocco for the most part. But if you're headed out to the Sahara, which I would highly recommend, or if you're traveling from Marrakesh to Fez, for example, you're going to cross the Atlas Mountains, which are pretty large. And we'll just say that the road system is being built out, right? It's not totally there. And definitely at certain points, it's down to one lane. They're going really, really fast, and I really appreciated not driving there. So primarily your guide is going to be your driver. Guides have to be licensed in each city. So Adir was not able actually to be our guide in most of the cities we visited because he's only licensed in one, right? In Marrakesh, for example. But he has contacts and he can arrange guides to walk you around each city, or you're welcome to just walk around by yourself and then meet him after. It's also really nice to have air conditioning because Morocco is hot. Even in, the winter, it's pretty warm during the day, just really, really cold at night. And it's nice to have someone to help find a bathroom. He's got like the better bathroom spots along all of the routes of Morocco. He knows where to take you to eat so that you have less likelihood of getting sick. Just a lot of things like that were nice little additions that I didn't expect. So I would recommend having a driver for sure. The For anyone who's also kind of a digital nomad like us, the cellular, when you buy a SIM card in Morocco, is actually really, really fast. So we were able to do a ton of work as well while we drove hours and hours between cities. So that
Oh,
was really
that's
nice.
nice. Yeah, good
Yeah.
use of time. Now,
Yeah.
did your guide then plan your whole itinerary for you?
He can. He definitely helps make recommendations. The first time he did, and then the second time we took my parents and our kids. So I had a lot more opinions on what I wanted to see. And I just gave him a list of cities, and then he planned our route, right? With according to how much time we had. Both times that we've done really intense itineraries because I want to see as much as I possibly can. Most people would not go to as many places as fast as we did, but I loved it. I love seeing the variety that Morocco has to offer.
Okay, so how long do you recommend that people go to Morocco? Because it sounds like you're moving around a lot and seeing a lot of things. So how much
Yes,
time should people plan for that?
anywhere from, I would say, the very, very minimum is a week, which is what we've done both times, to anywhere up to a couple of months. Our guide has guided people who are retired, for example, for like 28 days around Morocco. And there's so much more to discover than the highlights that we've seen. There's so many more like hikes and canyons and natural attractions, and you can visit like Berber villages, for example. There's a lot to see, but I would say a week is kind of the minimum.
Okay, that is definitely good to know. And you could even, I guess, tack it on to a European or Portugal experience, right?
Exactly.
If it's just an hour flight. So
Exactly.
maybe spend
Yes.
at least a long weekend in Lisbon and then head down to
Yes.
Morocco. I don't know.
I would
I
recommend
just
that,
like to
even
fit
only
as
for the
much
jet
in.
lag.
That's true. Yeah. I like to see as much as I can if I'm in an area and already buying those big expensive
Yes.
flights, right? Like try to
Once you're
stay as
over
long
the
as you
pond.
can. Mm-hmm.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. Okay. So you've hired a driver and then maybe guides in individual cities, depending on what you want. Um, then what about tipping the guides and how does that work there?
Tipping is definitely expected from tourists. It's unlike Europe, right? Portugal and much of Europe, tipping is not very common. They will happily accept it from tourists. But our day-to-day life in Portugal has really no tips. No tips for hairdressers, no tips at restaurants, no tips otherwise. Morocco is not that way. They definitely expect a tip. Everything is about bartering in Morocco, especially when you're walking through the cities. Obviously, you're not going to barter your hotel room, right? That you're booking online. That's a set price. Although you probably could if you were there, barter in person. But anything you're buying, any kind of guide, you're welcome to barter. They would not think that that was strange at all. I did sort of talk down the price both times that we've gone, by just saying, well, can you then include this? Or could, since we have so many, can we bring the price down? That's very, very expected, as is tipping. So, as a general rule, we try and tip our guide like somewhere around 10%. But something very important to keep in mind is that your guide is getting kickbacks from many of the activities you're going to. So many of the restaurants, many of the experiences they're going to take you to within a city or without a city, they're getting a percentage back. And as we've gotten to know our guide better on both of our trips, that percentage is anywhere between 5 to 20%. So if you're making large purchases, for example, we bought some Moroccan carpets on this last trip and spent, more than $1,000, they got a really good kickback from that experience. And that in turn, like we reduced our tip a little bit. Our guide also knows us well enough now that he's fairly transparent with that and even shared some of the kickback with us. Um, but that's not going to be your typical experience your first time.
Yeah. Okay. I have so many questions because there's so much I want to learn about this. All right. You're so good.
Absolutely.
You're sharing so many great things. Okay. So you mentioned hotels and you booked those ahead of time. Did your
Mhm.
guide suggest hotels or was this something that you just researched on your own? And also, would vacation rental homes be an option or are hotels really the way to go?
I would stick only with hotels just because I don't know how strong the vacation rental market is in Morocco. And there's a plethora of hotels. Most people are staying only one night in cities, just like we did, right? They're very, very used to that. And there's many, many options. Our guide in both cases was very willing to book hotels. I decided to book our own simply because we're always working, right? We work as we travel throughout the year and only actually take off 1 to 2 weeks a year when we're not working. So the first trip, we were working the whole time, being not every moment, of course, but we were trying to maintain a schedule. And then the second time we did not work because we were going with our kids. However, in both scenarios, I wanted a little more control on reading reviews, seeing how the internet functioned, especially for that first trip. And I don't know. We're a little bit more picky having a family of seven, right? I need to know what the sleeping arrangements are, what the bed arrangements are. And I was didn't want to leave that to someone else. So they're happy to arrange for you hotels, and you can get hotels extremely inexpensively in Morocco. You can get them $30 a night easily. A high-end hotel is 100 a night. I think the most expensive hotel we booked was 200 a night, and it was phenomenal. It was overlooking the beach, with the waves crashing all night. So I personally wanted a little more control, but if you're feeling nervous, you absolutely can just tell your guide, these are kind of the things I want. I want this kind of level of luxury, and they can book them for you.
Okay. Good to know. And was it hard to find bigger rooms for your family, or did you just book multiple rooms to fit everybody?
We always book multiple rooms because there's really no rooms that sleep seven.
Mm-hmm.
So we vary between 2 to 3 rooms per hotel. But there definitely was a variety in the older cities, such as Marrakesh, such as Fez. You're going to want to stay in what's called a riad, which is kind of like a little mansion within the city. I do think they used to be privately owned by the wealthy population, but they are now many that have been turned into hotels, and they're super charming. They're incredibly beautiful. Many of them have pools or spas, and from the outside, you could not even tell that it was there. Your guide will walk you up and you'll say, "This is it." And then you open the door and it's stunning. It's stunning tile work. It's a pool, there's running water, individually appointed bedrooms with bathrooms. They're really, really stunning. However, those are not usually built for families. So we usually would have to book 3 rooms in a riad, for example. And in some of the riads, they may only have 5 bedrooms. So we would either have it to ourselves, or, my parents would book one on the last trip we went to, and we would have the whole riad to ourselves. So in other places, we did find rooms with up to 4 beds. But if you're traveling with kids, especially if they're little kids, like if you're having 1 or 2 little kids, you need to bed share, or you need to just contact the hotel and ask if they have an extra bed, or if they can perhaps make a bed on the floor or something like that, or worst case scenario, split up, right? And you guys sleep in, the 2 parents maybe just sleep in different rooms.
Yeah. So it'll depend, but I was just curious how that worked for you. Okay. Now, what about food safety when you're traveling there?
It's a good question. It's a good question. So our first trip, we were super cautious. I, done lots of reading on what to eat, what not to eat. The big things to avoid are actually the sweets from carts and things that are on the street. They have amazing looking street food, but you can sit out in the sun all day with flies and bees, and that actually is the biggest culprit from what I read of what made you sick. And we did get a little sick. We did cave on, I think, our second to last day, and they were amazing pastries, but we did get a little bit of rumbly tumblies at the end of that day. Our second trip, we, were a little less cautious and stopped at much, how would I put this? Much more local places along our way that were a lot cheaper, a lot faster than, the touristy restaurants, which are going to be a couple hours minimum. And they're going to charge you prices that are pretty similar to Europe, like obviously very marked up from Morocco. The trade, though, is we did get a little more sick this time and brought back nothing serious, but just a little bit of upset tummies with us. And we even ventured and ate in one of the cities right downtown from a street vendor. So I would say we've tried the gamut. And if you stick to restaurants that your guide recommends, you're probably not going to get sick at all. It's only if you're going to push the limits like we did and want to try other foods or want to try street vendors or the pastries that have been sitting out a long time, you may run into some issues.
Okay, so you got to decide if it's going to be worth it or not.
It's up to you. Yeah, your level of risk.
Yes. Okay, now
But you easily can go safely for sure.
Okay, good. So besides food safety, what about just safety in general?
Yes, good question. I found because of their strong moral beliefs, I really think Morocco is incredibly safe. I was really, really surprised at how safe I think Morocco is on a larger scale. You still can definitely get some pickpocketing or some, like keep your purse safe, primarily in Marrakesh. That's going to be the biggest place to like. Our guide kept saying like zip your purse up, or keep that there, or don't let that hang out of your pocket. For example, we never ran into any problems at all. But Marrakesh is noticeably busier and different than all of the other places in Morocco that we visited. And I would say maybe I have, for example, a security travel purse, right, that I bought on Amazon many years ago that has steel cords through the straps so they can't be, taken off with the razor. And it's got locking zippers. And I felt absolutely safe with that. Morocco is very, very much society. So it's a closed currency. So you need to get cash when you're there and you cannot use it anywhere else once you leave. So it does mean that you're probably carrying around pretty significant amounts of cash, at least for their economy, right? And you need to have something secure to carry it in for sure. However, any big items, I find it to be really, really safe. I was never worried about the kids. I was totally fine with them being with our guides, holding hands into the cities. Probably the most dangerous part is that scooters are allowed to drive in the old cities, in the Medinas, and they go pretty fast. You want to just make sure you're always holding on to hands or keeping kids like between you and the wall, not the other way around, because sometimes those scooters come around a corner, for example, pretty quickly.
Okay. Now you say carrying a lot of cash. Do they not take credit cards at a lot of places?
A lot of places do not. Very touristy restaurants do, and hotels do, but even they prefer cash. Booking online ahead, of course, resolves a lot of that issue. But if you only pay a deposit, for example, or you only pay a portion, they'll probably ask you if you can pay the rest in cash.
Okay.
They're very, very cash heavy.
Cash is king in Morocco.
Cash is king.
All
And
right.
a tip for that I learned is also to only withdraw from ATMs that are connected to a bank, a physical bank location, because if it eats your card, you can then go into the branch and ask them for help. Try not to use ATMs that are just a one enclosed system all by itself. Your guide will know where to take you to get an ATM. And there are, I wouldn't say they're plentiful, but there definitely can be found in each city.
Okay, that's a very good tip. Now, I would love it if you could just share a couple highlights from the different cities that you visited, just to give us kind of a taste of what you'd expect if you're going there. So you mentioned Marrakesh and Fez, and I know also the Sahara you mentioned. So do you want to just tell us, what families could look forward to doing if they're visiting those different locations?
Absolutely. I'll give you my top cities and my favorite activities there. So Fez, like I said, is the oldest city. It's the biggest Medina or old part of the city. And the highlight there is probably the tanneries where they treat leather from cows, sheep, all kinds of animals, goats, even probably camels. And they have this ancient way of treating them in a tannery where they're using pigeon poop and natural dyes, and they make incredible leather goods. They make jackets, bags, wallets. It's really, really fun. And as well, you can like, of course, learn about the city. They have the oldest university in the world in Fez, so there's a lot of fun things to see there. Marrakesh is fast and furious, super fun. Going into the city center anytime after, well, really any time of day, up until 2 a.m. It's always busy. The daytime is a market, and then the nighttime is like a giant party. They're gambling. They have, snakes. They'll do henna. You need to be careful that they're not ripping you off. There's tons of places to eat. So I even ate a sheep's eyeball.
Wow, you're an
Marrakesh.
adventurous.
Thought it was really good. So Marrakesh is fun and furious, tons of shopping, lots of fun things to buy, lots of fun things to see. Casablanca has an incredible mosque that was built by the king, and it is a modern marvel. It's absolutely incredible. The whole ceiling opens to the sky. It's right over the ocean. They imported titanium doors. I mean, it's just a marvel to see. Casablanca is also the most modern and the largest city of Morocco. So it's sometimes feels a little bit more like home, depending on where you're coming from. Um, Chef Shawan is called the Blue City because they have literally painted the entire city blue, and it's stunningly beautiful. It's just really, really, really pretty. If you Google Morocco, you're probably going to see pictures of Chef Shawan. And we stayed in a darling little riad there that was truly magical. We were able to see the city all night and hear the sounds of it. It's a little more removed, kind of in the mountains. So it's not the same hustle and bustle as the other cities, and just very, very beautiful. And then, of course, the Sahara, which I asked several travel family friends, is it really worth it, when I found out how far it was to get there? And they all said yes. And I would absolutely back that opinion. It's 8 hours minimum of driving both ways to get there. So it's a small commitment. It's best to break that up into a couple of days and stay midway between the larger cities of Fez and Marrakesh. But so much fun, so much fun to ride camels, to sleep in the desert. They have multiple camps, and they all kind of do the same thing, where you're coming in on a camel or by car if you really don't want to ride a camel. You're playing in the sand dunes, you're coming and having a wonderful dinner, you're having a musical program, and then you're staying in these luxury tents with showers and toilets and really comfy beds and having a great breakfast and leaving. So I loved it. Our kids loved it. We took some night photography while we were there. It's really magical, and our kids have definitely said that's where they want to go back to. We also visited a new city on our last trip called Essaouira, which is right next to the ocean. And it is also a very beautiful city. It is probably the most famous because they used to have goats in the trees, and you could take pictures of goats in trees or pictures with goats in trees. But the government, unfortunately, has cracked down on that and will not let the shepherds bring their goats anymore to the side of the road. But Essaouira was really a surprise to us how much we liked it as well. If you want kind of a calm beach and city vibe, we really fell in love with that one too.
So many places to see. Okay, so you mentioned driving a lot to the Sahara. What about driving between the other cities? Are they pretty close, or should people plan on spending a lot of time in the car?
I think for our 1 week itinerary, we calculated it was about 35 hours of driving. You're definitely going to be in the car. Between cities is anywhere usually between 2 and 4 hours. So no day is really like a small amount of driving. To prepare for that with kids, we had my parents take our teenager in their car, and she got nice quiet time with them reading her books. And then we had all the younger kids, and we have actually learned to road trip with younger kids. The best route for us is to listen to an audiobook. So we did that for hours and hours and hours. We listened on this trip to Gregor the Overlander, which is a series by Suzanne. But I have listened to audiobooks all over the world, and I find that to make the kids excited to get in the car. They're excited that it's a longer drive because they really enjoyed the book. I also brought things for them to look at. I brought like some little crafts that we could do in our hands. And then we often made them take a nap as well. If we stayed up really late, we just, gave them some melatonin and said, we'll see you in an hour.
I love that.
And all got a little bit of rest.
Which is great. So would you hire 2 cars with 2 drivers then with the bigger group?
I think yes. I think they do have, trying to think, 8-passenger vans. We've had 8-passenger vans both times. So if we only went with our kids, we would probably just do that. But with my parents, we were 9. And it was pretty nice actually to have 2 cars, especially with the luggage that came with 9 people.
Right. No, that sounds fantastic. Okay. I think we covered almost everything. Oh, one thing left on the list. This one's an important one. Bathrooms. What did you want to tell us about bathrooms?
That's a good question. So for anyone who's traveled to Asia, you're going to know what a squatty potty is. And that is just a hole in the ground. And that's what they primarily use in Asia and Bali. It's kind of hard to actually find a Western toilet, which is what they call it outside of Japan. In Morocco, they do use a lot of squatty potties, but they also, I would say it's probably a half and half mixture. They have plenty of Western toilets as well. And if when we were with kids, there was a quote unquote emergency, right? Like we have to find a toilet really quick. We did run into more of the squatty potties in those scenarios, but otherwise our guide really had mapped out like a Western toilet every 2 hours. So we didn't have to use very many.
But be prepared and
be prepared.
Part of the cultural experience, right? So
it
wouldn't be too bad.
It is. And also know this can be a little different too, that all bathrooms you pay for, unless you're, for example, eating in their restaurant. So anytime you stop the car, even at a gas station, you are going to pay a little bit of money. It's 5-10 cents. It's not a big deal, but you definitely need to have some coins. And if you're with a guide, they will take coins for you. They will probably also give you toilet paper. That's not always provided either. And so if you want to be extra prepared, bring your own.
Okay, such good tips. Was there anything else you think we need to know about visiting Morocco, or have we covered it all?
I will just say we've been a lot of places, and Morocco holds such an incredible diversity of things to see and things that are absolutely so different than anything we've ever seen before that it really stole our heart. So while it can be a little bit intimidating to visit, a very, very different country, know that it's 100% worth it. It is such an incredible place to go. The best times to go are spring and fall. Really like June, July, August, and probably even September are going to be way too hot. So this is not a place you're going to visit on your traditional summer vacation, but the weather can be amazing in April, May, October, November. And then I'm not quite sure about the rest of the year. It may get a little bit too cold at night to do the Sahara, but I know that those 4 months are absolutely worth it. And I will just say it's a very unique set of memories that you're going to walk away with. A very amazing set of photography that you're going to bring home from Morocco. It's a very, very cool place.
Sounds amazing. Okay, well, thank you so much for sharing all of this with us. Where can people find you online? Because I know that you've posted a lot of pictures of Morocco and all of your travels. And then if anyone has questions, how would they reach out to you?
Absolutely. So we are called the 7 Wayfinders because we're a family of 7. We're obviously on Instagram. on Facebook. I have a blog where I've written quite a few posts on Morocco because I loved it. And then we also have videos. If that's your cup of tea, we've done quite a few Morocco videos as well on YouTube. So on all of those platforms, it is 7 Wayfinders, the number 7, and then spelled out word, but Wayfinders.
Okay, perfect. Well, we'll link to all of that in the show notes for this episode so people can
Perfect.
find even more info. So I like to wrap up with 3 questions. So first of all, this one could be challenging because you've been to so many places, but what is one of your favorite places that you have visited?
Well, outside of Morocco, which I obviously have a love affair with, I would say Iceland is
Okay.
very, very recommended. We went in late July of 2021, and it probably soared to the top of everyone's list. We got very lucky and were there during an active volcanic eruption, and we're able to see like lava flow and just mind-blowing kinds of things. But it also has an eternal summer, meaning that it really never gets dark. And so we were able to drive way late into the night, and we saw things like Glacier Bay, which is full of just serene floating glaciers at midnight, and it was like sunset, and it was incredible.
That
Incredible.
sounds amazing. Definitely on my list still.
Yes.
Now, what is one item that you love to take with you on every trip?
Oh, that's a good question. I really love a good pair of shoes. I've
Yes.
used Chacos on many a trip and love it when the weather cooperates that you only probably need one pair of shoes. But I would say, other than that, probably just a good travel pillow. Because if you're having a really good trip, you're going to need to rest anywhere you can.
That's true. Grab sleep when you can. And
Exactly.
then where are you going next?
Well, we're headed to Scotland next week, actually, which is a new country for us. And then we're taking off a couple other new places, one being Madeira, which is an island of Portugal. We currently live in Lisbon, so we're trying to explore one of the 2 sets of islands of Portugal. And then we're headed to Slovenia, Greece, and Turkey.
Amazing. I love that you're centered in Europe because it makes it so much easier to get to all of these countries that you get to visit.
Absolutely.
That
It's like
sounds
visiting a
so
new
much fun.
state, but it just happens to be a new country.
Right. So awesome. I love it. Okay, well, Morocco sounds amazing. I'm already like wheels spinning, like, okay, when does this fit into my travel plans? I'm not sure, but I definitely want to do it. It sounds like such a different and unique and just colorful cultural experience.
It's very fun.
So thank you so much for coming and for sharing so much with us.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. It was super fun.